Hi there, everybody. It's Scott from Gray Ghost Gardening, and I'm here for a quick video this afternoon for container potatoes. I've got a few leftover seed potatoes, some smaller ones that I thought would fit nicely into a container, and so I wanted to show you real quick what I do to try to help increase our potato harvest. First of all, my containers, trusty old 5-gallon bucket, food grade, never had any chemicals, no paint thinner, nothing like that in there, right? I have drilled holes in the bottom already. These happen to be 1/2 inch, but anything from 1/2 inch to 3/4 inch holes will work. I guess if you're using a smaller bit, then make a few more holes. If you've got that larger bit, then maybe not quite so many, but I would say at least a 6 I think here, since I had a 1/2 inch drill bit, I did 10. It's not a magic number, it's just what I did. But with potatoes, it's paramount that you get good drainage. Potatoes are real susceptible to rot if they stay in constantly wet soil, and so we're going to need this soil to drain, and putting enough holes in the bottom should take care of that. My soil mix here, I've got started out with roughly 1/3 potting mix, 1/3 black cow manure, and 1/3 peat, and mixed that all up. I added to it some vermiculite, again still just trying to keep it loose and again, the word that I like to use, loose and fluffy. And then I also added more than a cup, probably 1.25 cups of bone meal. Again, potatoes are a root crop, and yes, they need nitrogen because the tops feed the tubers that are growing in the soil, but they need heavy doses of phosphorus and heavy doses of potassium if they're really going to grow nice potatoes. If you go with a fertilizer, whether it be synthetic or organic, if it's got too much nitrogen, or if it's really heavy with nitrogen, you're going to get big tops and little to no potatoes. So real simple, what we do, we're going to fill the bottom of this bucket about 4 inches deep, and this is my little broken spade that I still use. And 4 inches is not quite as deep as the blade here for me, and so I'm going to fill this up quickly, and then I'll show you what we do to set the potatoes in there, and also talk a little bit about the potatoes. Potatoes require a little bit of education on your part. They're still super easy to grow, and as long as you've got a good soil, and as long as it drains well and stays nice and loose, you should be able to get some kind of a production. The question becomes, how big of a harvest, and how big will the tubers be that become your potatoes. The trick with potatoes is that they come in two basic varieties. Let me see where we're sitting. I think that looks pretty good. They come in two basic varieties. Here in the States, we call them either determinate or indeterminate. And you need to know which kind of potato you have, because it's going to make a little bit of a difference in terms of how you plant it and how you work with it. A determinate potato is going to have a single growing zone underground for the tubers to develop into potatoes. And regardless of whether you hill it up or keep mounding it up over and over and over, you're not going to get any more potatoes. It's a fixed zone, about 6 inches from where you put the seed potato in to, you know, where the top of the soil is. Now, the reason you might come back and add a little bit of soil with a determinate potato is to be sure that that growing zone is covered, because with potatoes you want no sunlight coming through the soil, because any potato that's developing near the top, if it gets direct sunlight or UV, it's going to turn green and become poisonous. So if you do this, which is, again, I encourage you, it's really simple, but if you take on this project and 90 days from now, 100 days from now, you dump out your container and you notice some of the potatoes look green, do not eat them. They will make you sick. So what I have here are a few small leftover seed potatoes. These are Norland Reds. They are determinate, which means, again, there's going to be just a single growing zone. And so I'm going to plant these here, and I'll move the camera over so you can see what I do. I'm going to plant them, and then I'm going to cover them with 6 to 7 inches of soil. And for the most part, we're done. Once these chits sprout up through the top, and I let them get 6 or 7 inches tall, I'll come back and top just a tiny little bit more soil on top of them, and then I'll put some mulch or some straw, something to help keep the sunlight directly off the surface of the bucket. Now, eventually the plants will grow up and get really big and bushy and block most of the top of the bucket anyways, but that's the plan. So again, these are determinate. An indeterminate potato, it will grow, it'll poke through the soil, you can mound it up, it'll grow up again, and it will have multiple growing zones. It will develop tubers higher up in deeper sand, or deeper soil rather, sorry. And so you can keep mounding the indeterminate potatoes up and get a bigger yield. Indeterminate potatoes would be really good for potato towers, or a really high, deep bucket or container, where you can start it down at the bottom, and then as the green part of the plant breaks through the soil and gets 6-7 inches tall, you cover it almost all the way up again, and that leaf, that foliage that's grown on the plant will die off, and it'll just turn into a continuous root, and then the tubers will start to come off of that. So anyways, let me move the camera and give you a look down into the bucket so you can see what's going on here. All right, so like I said, you know, I'm using the blade of my spade here kind of as a gauge, and that's, you know, maybe a little bit better. Maybe that's 5 inches or so long. And as I measure it there, you can kind of see roughly, because I'm hitting the bottom with it. So there's about 1 inch of the blade sticking up. Now my soil that I have made up is really, really wet, because again, we had some more rain, and I guess I didn't have it covered well enough. Anyway, so these are my little potatoes, and these are little seed potatoes, right? So that's why I'm going to use them whole. Sometimes you get larger seed potatoes, and you can cut them, and as long as you've got 2 chits on there, you should be in good shape, and you should get a pretty decent harvest or yield. Again, these were kind of leftover because these were the little runty ones that I had left. I had an extra bucket, so I figured why not see what I can get out of it. So I'm going to plant them where the chit is already growing up, and I'm just going to spread them evenly here in the bucket. And here's my last one. Normally you would like at least 2 chits coming off each, but I think because these, and some of them are, you know, they're starting here, some other ones, but these are such little seed potatoes that, so you see what I've got there, right? I just lightly pushed them into the ground. I'm not mashing them into the ground or anything like that. And so what I'm going to do now is bury them, you know, 6 to 7 inches deep. And on this bucket, if I were to go another 6 inches or so, 6 to 7 inches, it'll be about to right here where these rings are. You can measure it with a ruler or a yardstick or whatever, but you know, it's not really necessary to do that. So let me fill this up. And we will be in business. The you know, potatoes need full sun, and they will need a little bit of care as they grow and as the plant itself grows, because sometimes they can get pretty tall. You know, I've experienced different things in different years. Sometimes they've grown really tall, sometimes they've stayed kind of squatty and short. But if they do grow really tall, you have to be real careful where you have the bucket placed, because you might end up with a spring storm, either a strong rain or a heavy wind, right? The Ides of March here in Texas. It seems like the wind never quits blowing once we get into March, and that could potentially damage the plant, which then in turn is going to impact and you know, have a negative impact on your tuber production. I will come back. Potatoes are heavy feeders, and so I will come back and fertilize a couple of times with a pelletized fertilizer, probably something in the neighborhood of a 10-10-10 or maybe a 5-10-10, where again I'm not quite so worried about all of the nitrogen that sometimes we're concerned with plants that are growing above ground. So this should be good for now. There's a little clump that I didn't get broken up. You can see how wet my potting soil is here from getting caught in the last rainstorm, but that's okay. That just means I don't have to water this in. And you'll notice I'm not going to really pack this in hard or heavy. I'll get it labeled and dated and set it in a happy place for it to grow. Okay, so just quick recap. I had a few leftover seed potatoes. They were Norland Reds. They are a determinate potato, which means they have kind of a fixed single layer growing zone, whereas an indeterminate potato, you can keep mounding it up or hilling it up, as you often hear the term used, and they will continue to grow throughout that space. They'll continue to develop tubers, which turn into potatoes in that entire mound of soil. But these determinate potatoes, they won't do that. I will come back once the plant itself gets over the top of the bucket here and is about 6-7 inches tall, and probably put another inch, maybe 1.5 to 2 inches max of soil in here. And then I will eventually put either some mulch or some straw in here to further insulate and protect the surface, because we don't want sunlight or UV or anything getting down to the tubers. All right, that's very, very important. Got good drainage. I've got, potatoes are heavy feeders. They need phosphorus and they need potassium. And so you've got to make sure that you've got an adequate supply of that if you want nice tubers. These potatoes, if you listen in Europe, in particular in the UK, on YouTube, they're phenomenal videos about container potatoes. They don't use determinate and indeterminate. They use early, second earlies, mid-season, these kinds of things, and late season. And so usually the first earlies, the second earlies, and sometimes even the mid-season are determinate varieties of potatoes. You kind of have to play around with potatoes and see what grows best in your growing zone. Again, I'm in Southeast Texas, growing zone 9B, as in boy, and so the problem that we run into is that we warm up really fast, and so somehow I still have to get enough sun for my potatoes, but I have to try to keep the containers from overheating too much. White buckets for potatoes are better than dark colored buckets where I live, because the dark color, especially a black bucket, something like that, is going to absorb a lot more light, or a lot more heat rather, sorry. So really simple. Again, if you've got a small space, if you just want to experiment, this is an easy thing. Kids get a kick out of this. You usually don't want to use store-bought potatoes. If you are going to try to do a store-bought potato, buy a bag of organic potatoes, because they won't have any growth inhibitors sprayed on them. If you just go to the local market, the local grocery store, and buy a bag of potatoes and think, oh, I'm gonna wait till these sprout and grow these, you're probably gonna be disappointed. There's lots of places where you can get seed potatoes, plenty of options that are available online, plenty of feed stores, garden supply, even the big box stores, if you get there early enough, will have seed potatoes. So plenty of options to get a certified seed potato. It should grow better for you, have a better result, be happier with it. As this grows and develops, I'll have some follow-ups so that you can see what's going on. Thank you for joining me on this hopefully a little bit quicker video this afternoon. If you haven't already, I'd love for you to hit the like button. If you've got any questions or comments, or if you do something different, by all means, share that with me. I'd love to hear it. And I would also appreciate it if you would subscribe and stay with me as we go through this growing season. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.